What was the biggest bullet you dodged? My dad was a truck driver in the oil field in Canada. He worked a lot of long hours, and every single day. So on weekends he would bring me and my younger brother on some of his jobs. We were on location and my little brother, 3 years, and me, 10 years, were waiting for him playing in cab of truck. My little brother opened the passenger door and my little arms closed it. Job's done. We start our trek home going about 35 km/h and the door flies open and I get sucked out of truck. I remember doing about 10 backflips as I tumbled out, hitting the ground on my back a few times and rolling my way to a stop. I stood up before the truck was even stopped in absolute shock. Next thing I see my dad looking for me and he burst into tears. First time I ever seen him cry. I'm 33 now and he still won't talk to me about it. Luckily the rig was in a farmer's field, so when we were leaving I landed on softer dirt. Not a single scratch on me. Dad thought he ran over me with trailer. Don't think we ever went to work with dad again. I work for the company now. A few years ago I had pneumonia, but my whole family insisted that it was just postnasal drip, which runs in the family. After a week or two I woke up in the middle of the night when I couldn't feel my arm. After I got to the ER, the doctor said that it was the worst he'd ever seen, and he was surprised I wasn't dead. I had 3 pounds of mucus cut out of my lungs and another 2 weeks in the hospital siphoning out the rest. For 3 months afterwards I could barely walk half a mile without starting to pass out, and I still can't run for more than 200 to 300 yards without collapsing. Around 30,000 pounds. I was driving with my wife in town one snowy evening, and we had pulled up to a stoplight. I happened to glance up at the rear view mirror and saw a city bus heading towards us and rotating sideways. I hit the gas and pulled ahead into the intersection and left into the turning lane, and less than a second later, the bus went sliding through right where our car was. It came to a stop on the other side of the intersection and fortunately didn't hit anything, but 1 second or 2 feet difference and we would have had some nice spinal injuries. Many years ago, my flight had just landed at Chicago O'Hare and the plane was taxiing when the pilot suddenly slammed on the brakes. People were literally thrown forward against the seat in front of them. A few seconds later, another plane, taking off I think, went screaming by right in front of us. No explanation was given, though our imaginations provided a lot of gory details. As a kid, after running errands in town with my mom, I was climbing into the back seat of our family station wagon. A semi-truck hits a power line pole down the street causing the still live wire to fall, bounce off the roof of the car and hang across the open door just a foot or two above my legs. Raised Catholic, I wondered for a while after if I had actually died that day and that the rest of what I thought was my life was my purgatory. Not changing jobs in early 2020 would have been a short-lived promotion after early restructuring and layoffs. After I had a stroke, I was in a coma, and it didn't look like I'd wake up. The doctors asked my wife if they should let me go. I only exist because she said no. I didn't dodge a bullet so much as my wife blocked it for me. Semicolon. Edit: I didn't think this would be this popular. I'm posting a video my wife made of the first year of recovery if anyone's interested. Warning, it's long. Left square bracket. A friend had lost his job under suspicious circumstances. A few weeks later he asked me to take him to the bank. As I got near to pick him up I caught a train. He called to say never mind, he would get someone else. A few days later a friend sent out a message to a large number of our friends. This guy lost his job and was running a check cashing con. Can you cash this check for me? I'll pay you $50 if you do. The check is $500. He has no backing funds. You eat the whole amount. He did this to several friends in a few days to amass a few grand and was about to skip town when the cops got him. My newborn needed to be rushed to a super high level NICU to be put into a state of induced hypothermia because he only had hours before he would suffer permanent brain damage. I live in a small town in the middle of nowhere. The small town next door just barely upgraded their hospital to have that hypothermia suite, one of only a few in Texas. He's doing great, no sign of any damage. Not me, but I had a field service engineer working on one of my big robotic liquid handlers. He decided to bypass the safety pin that prevents the heads from moving while the cover is open, while he had a diagnostic program queued up on the COMPUTER*. What he didn't know was that the instant he reinserted the safety pin, the machine would execute the queued instructions and start moving, and he had a hand inside it right in the danger zone. I grabbed his shoulder and yanked his hand out an instant before it was crushed. He stopped ignoring me when I told him to stop bypassing safety lockouts to save a few minutes. I survived a rocket attack that landed about 10 meters from me, very close to where we were standing. We were so close to the launch site that the warning alarm came after the rocket had already impacted. Thankfully, we were able to dive under a vehicle for some shelter and the three of us made it through unscathed. I stayed up all night before a day trip to Hong Kong. You know that days when you haven't slept, you're just kinda robotic and doing the human stuff, nearly zero awareness of anything. Well, I went across the street and my friend behind me snatched my shoulder and yanked me backwards just in time to feel the whoosh of a double-decker bus breezing past us. I just looked at him like, oh, thanks man, and it took a whole extra minute for my brain to process I would be fucking dead had he not grabbed me. Had a teacher in high school who was wicked sarcastic and witty while also being a hard-ass grader. To me, the perfect teacher. Class was challenging, but we were all laughing and having a good time. He was a great mentor and I continued to visit his class even after I graduated. One time, post-graduation, I was sitting in his office and I had just given him some art to decorate his classroom with, and he was so excited he blurted, "I could kiss you." Something about the intense eye contact unsettled me, but I laughed it off. 17y/a girl, what can I say? Couple months later, he was arrested for having a sexual relationship with an underage student. My first husband and I were separated. He showed up at my apartment building unannounced and someone let him in because they recognized him from when he lived there. He wanted to come upstairs, but I met him in the lobby instead, where there were cameras and other people. He had never been violent towards me, but it didn't feel right to allow him into my space. He asked me to go for a drive with him and I refused. I offered to help him get help, mental health issues, that he refused to treat. He declined and drove away. He was missing for a few days, but turned up several states away visiting a friend. A few days after that he took his own life using a handgun. We found out later that he'd purchased the gun here and headed straight out of town when I refused to get in the car with him. To this day, I'm thankful that I never got in that car with him. He'd never even talked about buying a gun before. I had no idea he was armed. Who knows what would have happened. Was going to move to a different apartment complex last month, got injured at work and lost hours, therefore, couldn't come up with the deposit money in time. Last week the Mashad was cooking meth and caught the building on fire. Edit, my username. My current apartment complex is notorious in my city for having elevator troubles, so in reality, username does check out. Also, you could say I dodged 2 bullets. Point 1, the fire. 2, I know bad stuff happens everywhere blah blah blah, but the new place really didn't strike me as the kind of place where meth heads live. So I guess avoiding those kind of people for neighbors was dodging a bullet in itself. I can answer this in a literal way. When I was a child, I was playing video games with my little brother. Well, he found our dad's gun and fired it. No one was hurt, but it scared the shit out of me. There was a pile of stuff that people would leave at our house when I was at university, coats and stuff. Moving out day, and we found a random samurai sword in the pile. We were messing about with it trying to make it go swoosh. I was stood facing my brother while he was swooshing it when the blade dislodged from the handle, flew straight past me, and stuck horizontally into my headboard. So yeah, my brother nearly impaled me while messing around with a random sword we found after a house party. Pics for proof. I interviewed for a job that I wanted desperately in August 2019. After the initial phone interview, I went in for an in-person interview at 4 PM on a Wednesday. I had a rejection in my inbox by 8 PM and was completely gutted. Then 2020 happened, and they laid off 60% of their staff and will probably go under. I'm thankful for that rejection every day. When my great aunt passed away, I was helping to clean out her house. I'm just dragging everything out of the basement and suddenly my dad is like, "Whoa, put that down gently and let's move away from here." So I put the weird metal tube type thing I'm carrying down and get out of there. Turns out it's a mortar shell from when my aunt worked in a munitions factory during WWII. Bomb squad came and took it away. My mother left me in one state and went back to my abusive stepfather. She tried to get me to drop out of my senior year at HS, move back to their state and just get my JED. They wanted a live-in babysitter, cook, and maid. I was so lucky my grandparents let me move in with them and finish school. Edit. Thanks for all the love, guys. For those who have asked, I'm doing great. I've gone no contact with my mother and stepfather. They're still together, and it's been one of the most healthy decisions I've made. My husband and my kids are amazing, and she's missing out big time. My grandparents are alive and well, and are still involved in our lives.